the order in which I read Emily Henry's books just keep getting better and better. Everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Mabel and this is Mabel Journals, where we talk about books and or journals. And in today's video, I am going to be doing a book video where I'm going to be talking about these 3 books, or Emily Henry books in general. I am going to be reading 2 of these because I've already read People We Meet on Vacation in the past. And what kind of sparked this video was I wanted to read other books from Emily Henry because I wasn't really a huge fan of People We Meet on Vacation. I read it back in 2022 when it first came out. It had a lot of hype, it had a lot of movement with it, and then when I read it, I was just a little disappointed. So I am trying to see what other, because I see Emily Henry everywhere. I follow her on Instagram. I follow her pretty much on a bunch of socials. I even am part of her grocery list. You know, I just want to see if I am an Emily Henry fan. So I am planning on reading Book Lovers, and I'm also planning on reading Beach Read. I actually got my mom the Spanish version of this, so we might read it together. So these 2 books, one of these is about books, the other is about writers. So those are things I usually enjoy, and I obviously love romance, so I'm thinking I'd really like both of these. In addition to these 2, I'm also going to be reading Happy Place because LibroFM added it as one of their free influencer books on LibroFM. Since I am going to be talking about all 3 of these books, I will avoid spoilers for sure. All right, so without further ado, let's get started on reading her books. I finished reading all of the Emily Henry books and I have a lot of thoughts. Let's start with the one I read last year. People We Meet on Vacation. I didn't enjoy it as much as I had hoped to. Mainly the premise wasn't that interesting to me. Friends go on vacation constantly and it's kind of like their thing, and that's kind of like what brought their friendship to become what it is. For me, it just felt like, why do I care about these characters? You know, like it's cute. There was nice banter. There was, you know, the writing was very well done. However, I just didn't feel like I cared about these characters that much. And I think a lot of it had to do with, I didn't feel like they were as developed as I would have liked them to be. For me, I did enjoy this book. I probably will read it again now that I have a physical copy. But I don't think I would really recommend this to many people. Maybe one or two people I can think of that might enjoy this, but for me, I wasn't really a huge fan of it. And so for that reason alone, I did give this a 3-star because again, it did have some things that I very much enjoyed and I thought it was a good read, but I didn't think it was a waste of time, basically. If I would have thought it was a waste of time, I probably would have given it a 2 or a 1, but it definitely was not that low. It just, for me, I just didn't connect with the characters. I didn't vibe with the premise. It wasn't for me. That's basically how I feel about this book. Now, the things I didn't really enjoy about People We Meet on Vacation, I felt like Beach Read definitely fulfilled. So in Beach Read, I definitely enjoyed the premise. We follow our main character, January, and her love interest, also / main character, what's his name? Gus. And Gus and January are kind of like sort of in like a second chance romance. They've never like actually dated, but they did have like a little something, tiny little thing in college. And they're both authors in this small town. And a lot of like kind of what happens definitely connects a little bit better with what the purpose is of the story. So January is a very full-fledged, fleshed out main character, and so is Gus, and they have their own backstory, they have their own trauma, they have their own lives basically, and it makes sense that they're where they're at in life, and it makes sense that they have certain goals and purposes that are actually talked about within the book. And then they are both authors, like I mentioned. Our main character, January, tends to write like romantic, feel-good books, and our other main character, who's her love interest, Gus, writes books that are a little bit more, you know, they have a little bit more of like a shock factor to them. They don't always end that well, and it's more just like more, I believe, more realistic than what January puts out. And so they're both in this town, they're the only 2 authors, and they decide, hey, you write this kind of book like I write, and I'll write this kind of book like you write, and we'll see what happens from there. Overall, I did very much enjoy the plot. I like the idea of this. I like the idea of like how everything worked out together. I still very much enjoyed this book, and I definitely will recommend this to some friends. There was a lot of really good banter. There was a lot, and that's one thing that Emily Henry does very, very well. I love her witty banter. Her characters, like you are obviously a part of their conversation, so you definitely feel like, oh, these characters belong together. Like I think my only qualm with the book is mainly the side characters, and every other character that's not January and Gus, they don't feel like they're fully fleshed out. They feel like they only exist for these 2 main characters. And for me, it just didn't really feel as realistic as I'd want it to. I still very much enjoyed this because obviously these are the 2 main characters. So what matters is that they're fleshed out. As far as like feeling like I'm immersed in the story and feeling like connections to the town and feeling like I'm walking around this beach town, I didn't feel that. And so that was my biggest qualm with this book. I gave this a 3.5. I still very much enjoyed it. A 3.5 is good, better than good, right? Not yet great, but it's definitely valuable. It is memorable. I may or may not recommend this, and I feel like this particular book I definitely recommend, but wanted more fleshed out characters. I wanted to feel the town a little bit more. There were certain parts where I was like, where are we again? You know, and so for me, I felt that particular way. I do feel like the order in which I read Emily Henry's books just keep getting better and better. So we started off with People We Meet on Vacation, we moved on to Beach Read, and now we're in Book Lovers. And Book Lovers, I loved. I absolutely loved this book. The premise, the plot, was definitely of my interest. It was definitely up my alley. It was what I enjoyed about her books. I thought that an agent and an editor talking about books, talking about, like, not only do they talk about books because it's their job, they also are just completely engulfed and in love with books. And so whenever they talk about things they love, including each other or people around them, they use like these cute like book quips, or they use this like book language that is just so well put together. So it's not only is it witty banter, it's also bookish banter, which to me, it speaks to my soul. And again, like I mentioned in Beach Read, you're reading this banter, you're reading this dialogue between characters, and you know, as you're reading, these characters belong together. Like, these characters fill each other's sentences. They don't say what they think they're gonna say to each other. They have like the spontaneity to their, conversation, and it's beautiful. It gives me all the vibes, honestly, all the bookish vibes that I've looked for. In this book, we follow Nora and we follow Charlie, and Nora is a book agent and Charlie is an editor, a book editor. And so in the beginning of the book, they meet and they're talking about this book, and they obviously have disagreements on this book. And Nora is like this very like type A, like I'm always early, like I do this, I do that, like she does everything by the book, and Char's very just like to the point kind of person. And so they meet together and they don't get along very much. And then 2 years later, they meet again in this small town. Again, I love it when Emily Henry just brings us to a small town to make it a small town romance. And it's just such a cute way that it's developed. The characters within, so like Beach Read, again, I mentioned in Beach Read that it felt like the main characters were the only ones that were fully developed. In this one, we get a little bit more development in our side characters, which I thought was really good. And we also get like a much better feel of what the town feels like and looks like and is. And I also loved how this ended more than how I loved how Beach Read ended. I thought that it was it made sense. Like the finality of this book made sense, and overall I very much enjoyed it. I gave this a 4-star. I very much enjoyed this one. I annotated this one in a different way. If you're interested on how I annotate my books, let me know, and I can maybe do a whole video on my whole annotation process. I have levels of annotation. But anyway, this particular book I absolutely loved. I gave this a 4-star, and I didn't give this a 5-star because there was still some parts of it where I was like, I don't know, this could be done a little bit better, or I didn't really appreciate certain parts. I don't want to give those things away because they're part of the plot, and I don't want to give away too much of the story. But basically, even though we do have the depthness of these characters, there was just something that was missing for me in the end, and some parts in the middle as well. And when you read, maybe you'll see them, I'm not sure, but I don't want to give those away. But what I will say is I did think that there needed to be a little bit more depthness to certain parts of the book. And I also felt like I was missing, it just felt like the ending, even though it was what I wanted, it felt a little anticlimactic. It kind of happened a little too quickly for my liking and a little too pretty for my liking. And that was just my, that's just my opinion. But overall, I very much enjoyed this book, and I 100% recommend it. Now we've reached our very last book, which is Happy Place, and is my favorite book of all the books that I've read from Emily Henry. I was able to read this book a little bit earlier because I got it from LibroFM, and I didn't necessarily read it. I listened to it through audio, and that was a little difficult for me. I have an annotation journal where I annotate, and that helped a lot, but it still sometimes is a little difficult. Like, I didn't know how to spell out the names. Like, for example, one of the main characters' names was Wynn, and I didn't really know how to spell it. Like, is it W-Y-N? Is it W-I-N? Is it W-Y-N-E? Is it W-Y? Is it W-H-Y-N-E? Like, I just didn't know how to spell the names. I obviously looked it up and figured it out, but overall I didn't know how to spell certain names. But once I got to towards 30% of the book, I was just like, okay, now I'm understanding what's happening. And so we follow Harriet, aka Harry, and she is basically the exemplar daughter, the one that does everything her parents tell her to do. She's never been a problem child. She's never had an issue. She's always been getting good grades. She's always done everything everyone has expected of her, and she's expecting happiness from that, but she's not receiving it. And so the title of the book is Happy Place, where all of the characters that we learn about are just trying to find happiness, because aren't we all trying to find happiness, right? Anyway, I absolutely loved this book. I got Friends vibes from it. If you've ever seen the show Friends, it follows 6 different friends, and obviously our main character is Harriet and her love interest Wynn, and you know, they are trying to figure out like what's going to make them happy, if being together makes them happy, if following their own individual goals makes them happy. And so Harriet has always followed the path that her parents have given her for happiness and for her career, and little by little has to learn to find her own path and to discover her own self. And that is just so connected to how I feel and how I know a lot of people in this world feel. You know, like, when do I draw the line? When do I find my own path? And in the end, she kind of has to figure out what's going to make her happy. And what I loved about this book that's different from the other books that I feel like is definitely an improvement is that all of our characters have such good development, and the appropriate amount of development. Like, obviously our main character is fully developed, so is our love interest fully developed. We have a past, we have trauma, we have a future, we have light, we have just so much going on. And then we also have the other characters that aren't necessarily main characters, but have like a life of their own and feel real. And it just felt so well put together. If you've ever had like a group of friends in college or in high school and y'all have drifted apart and drifted back together, like, I definitely recommend this book because it talks so much about that. I also loved how a lot of like the good quotes that we usually get from Emily Henry books come from different people depending on what they've been through, and I just think it's so beautiful. So overall, I gave this book a 5-star because how could I not? I enjoyed it, I laughed, I cried. Again, the banter is there. And another thing I really loved is that it's technically a second chance romance, but it's also fake dating, which I don't know if I've ever read anything like that before, but you just gotta read it to understand. I don't want to give away too much because I felt like it was so good because I didn't give away a lot. Just to give you the vibes of what it's about, it's a group of friends and they have grown up in this happy place, and little by little, you know, that happy place is kind of diminishing in different ways, whether it's metaphorically or physically, and they kind of have to find their way towards happiness and also find their way towards that happy place. And I just thought that it was just so well put together. It's not just a romance, it's also self-discovery and self-fulfillment, and that's what's beautiful in my opinion about this. And I think a lot of what Emily Henry books do is they have that. They have like not just that romance, but our main character has to find herself before she gives into any other romance or before she lets anyone else into her life. And I think that that's beautiful, and I think that that's just so well connected to what we want in life. At least I do, and I thought that that was really well done. Overall, I do have to say Emily Henry is probably one of my auto-buy authors. Anything she writes, I will most likely purchase. I had so much fun creating this, so much so that I can't wait to maybe try another author. Let me know if there's any other authors out there that you want me to do something similar. I do have a few Abby Jimenez books that I was thinking about doing, along with some others. I think Lynn Painter is another one that I wanted to try. So let me know if you're interested, and I hope you had just as much fun watching as I had creating this vlog for you. If you stayed to the very end, please leave this writing emoji so that I know that you stayed. And again, I just love to know those people that stayed, just because it just makes me feel extra special, and I absolutely appreciate them as well. So thank you, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!